Annual panel discussion tonight, the topic being citizens' action, help or hindrance. We have the eminent panelists who would take the stage shortly to give their views on the topic. Before I call the moderator, our own Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee, on the stage, it is always a pleasure for us to say a few words about him, as such, though he needs no introduction. Once Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee is on the stage, he will introduce the panelist and would take it from there. Though by profession, Dr. Chatterjee is an eminent doctor, but he is an outstanding moderator, and he is most sought after for these sort of events in the city. Dr. Chatterjee, when it comes to a neurosurgeon, switches on to a different role altogether, operating on the brain of innumerable patients and saving their lives. Dr. Chatterjee has earned the distinction of being one of the reputed neurosurgeons in the city and a professor head of the Department of Neurosurgery at the Vivekananda Institute of Medical Sciences. He is associated with Park Clinic, Kolkata. Holding of such big events cannot be done without the support of the Telegraph, who had been continuously supporting us in holding such events, may it be the panel discussion, the debate, and our celebrations that we hold on the festive occasion. They help in sponsoring major costs, as well as giving ads in the papers, and today they are also there with their radio partner 91.9 Friends FM. We are also thankful to Mr. Utsav Parekh for his generous contribution on behalf of Bengal Erythropolis for this particular event. I would now call on stage Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee to take it over from here.
Thank you, Kunal. Good evening and welcome to this panel discussion. In a panel discussion, the last person you want to hear is the moderator. So I'm going to be quick off the block and invite my panelists onto the dais first. And since we have only one lady in the panel, it is appropriate to invite her to come up to the dais first. And I have great pleasure in welcoming to the dais Mrs. Kalyani Chaudhary. Mrs. Chaudhary retired in 2008 as Commissioner General and Additional Miss Chaudhary retired as Commissioner General and Additional Chief Secretary in the Land and Land Reforms Department of our state. She is a retired bureaucrat, but she knows a lot about citizens' actions. Though we can't call her an ordinary citizen by any means, she did have the guts to get into action and describe the bureaucracy as clerkocracy in power. And I quote her when she says, "I see little to choose between the clerkocracy that I call Kerani Tantro in power and the ones in the wings, both prone to populism in capital letters." In fact, she wrote a famous book called When the Pendulum Stops, and she recounts the depths of depravity to which a state can sink when it is ruled by a political party for a significant length of time. I'm not sure whether it's gravity or depravity or the Bengalis' effort to prove Newton's first law of motion correct, but the pendulum doesn't seem to be swinging quite the way Miss Chaudhary envisaged that it would in the book, and it seems just to be stuck at a different point from the time when she wrote the book. Welcome to the dais, madam. The second panelist that I have great pleasure in inviting to the dais is Mr. Devi Goenka, who's come to us all the way from Mumbai. He's a citizen who has been in the midst of a lot of action. Mr. Goenka is an environmentalist who started his love affair with the environment way back in 1974 during his college days. First as a volunteer with the WWF, and I'm happy to tell you, he shares some of the same girlfriends that I do, and their tigresses in various wildlife sanctuaries in this country. My wife is here, so don't think I would say anything otherwise. He has served on various committees, appointed by the Bombay High Court, the Ministry of Environment and Forests, and the Maharashtra government. His actions have included protection of the mangroves, protection of the Borivali National Park, and protecting the forests in Vidarbha. And he has been involved in a number of environmental campaigns. In fact, I was surprised to note that his citizens' actions are not confined to the geographical boundaries of our motherland. And in October, he launched a landmark legal objection to India's energy giants Adani's 60 million ton Carmichael coal mine in Queensland. Welcome, Mr. Goenka. The third panelist is one of us, as in very much a man from Bengal, and that is Mr. Shamul Dotto. Mr. Dotto, I welcome you to the dais. Certainly, you cannot regard as an ordinary citizen somebody who served as a governor. And Mr. Dotto has served as the governor of Nagaland. But action, whether citizens or otherwise, he has seen plenty of. In the Indian Police Service from July 1965. He served as Superintendent of Police in several districts of West Bengal. Though his actions, somewhat bold actions, made him at some point of time change his place of work from Calcutta to the capital city, where in fact he served in various capacities, including the director of the elite SPG. In fact, he spent a lot of time controlling the Intelligence Bureau, taking over as the director, and retired from that position. He was recipient of the Indian Police Medal for Meritorious Service, the President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service, amongst a lot of other accolades that he's won in his professional life. Mr. Sunil Prabhu is our next guest. And while Mr. Prabhu comes up to the dais, I think he is, as a journalist, used to action, whether as a citizen or not. And his 17-year career in TV journalism has seen him tackling many of South Asia's biggest news stories. Of course, he spent most of his life now at the NDTV, though he says, even as a journalist who is very well known, he has not much interest in fame or accolades. I don't believe in glamour, he says, and he says the phrase he dislikes the most in life is high profile. A lot of other journalists say the same. His involvement in journalism interestingly, came by chance. When after graduating from JNU, he says he saw an advertisement which caught his eye because the advertisement said, trespassers will be hired. And he read it 3 times to make sure it didn't say prosecuted, but said hired. So he decided to be one of those trespassers and decided to join one of the television channels. And of course, thereafter has been very much active as a news journalist. He carried a lot of articles during the sweeping reforms of 1991, and his probably most memorable story broke in 2008 when he conducted an investigation into corruption in the judiciary in Ghaziabad. In fact, the death penalty is another subject close to his heart, and that might be mentioned in his deliberations this evening. And the final panelist is a friend for over half a century, and that is Mr. Ashok Vishwanathan. When a graduate in mathematics decides to become a film director, this itself represents a citizen's action of some sorts. For Ashok is a mathematics graduate from St. Xavier's College and a graduate in film direction from the Film and Television Institute of India. He is currently the professor and head of the Department of Producing for Film and TV Specialization at the Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute, and also lectures in Jadavpur University. Ashok has made many award-winning features and documentaries, such as The Lighthouse, The Ocean and the Sea. He's directed commercial films like Shesh Shankhat, and has also made films like Gumshuda. He has served as chairperson of the jury for non-feature films in National Film Awards. In fact, Ashok Vishwanathan's films have won a lot of national awards, one of which was in fact called Shunno Theke Shuru, and the other one was called Kichu Songlap, Kichu Prolap. Today we will hear Ashok Songlap and hopefully not his Prolap. And that brings us to the end of the session of introduction. I think they're such eminent people that I had to delve a little bit about them, and particularly had to make sure that their introduction was longer than Kunal's introduction of the moderator. You know, the discussion today is on the theme citizens' action, help or hindrance. So, you know, when citizens act, we hold a panel discussion about it. And the oldest club in Asia decides that will be the subject of its annual panel discussion. Does that mean in democracy, citizens acting or action of citizens is considered to be an exception rather than the rule? And our role as citizens in a democracy is to be passive observers of the process of democracy for all except 2 days every 5 years. Does this citizens' action lead to any results at all? And I'm going to throw these 2 questions open to my panelists first. Is it so unusual for having a citizens' action? And if you have citizens' action, does it lead to any results at all? Mr. Shamul Dotto to kick off.
Ladies and gentlemen, while I was driving down Ho Chi Minh's Colony, I was asking myself what happened that I came under the scanner of city's most eminent surgeon that I have been called to this evening. And answer that I got to myself was perhaps he wanted some archival person to deal with the matter, to let's get back to historical past of the question he has raised. I'll just stretch it a bit more than saying yes or no. When you look at the history of citizens' acts or action, I consider it as a part of function of citizenship. And if you take citizenship into consideration, you find its journey has been rather coarse, tough, and not so smooth. And its history has been as old as history itself. Because ultimately citizenship is nothing but an expression of what people think, do, act, speak. When we joined the service, cutting it short, we never knew that we have some citizens groups acting on behalf of the citizens with their authority or sanction. Neither we knew that we are supposed to meet or interact with such persons or groups. And mostly, if you divide India's history between 1947 and today it's 2023, you find the entire stretch of more than 70 years can be divided into two distinct parts. One was the part before independence, another was immediately following the independence, third was a period of total passivity, and last one was what to do. After all, we have seen if citizens had not acted, perhaps we would not have assembled here. Now, when you look at the history of this period, in the year 1980s, in fact, we started seeing some growth of citizens groups all over the country. Before that, we had seen what had the Marxists done in West Bengal in terms of grouping people and trying to indoctrinate them or infuse them with a particular political philosophy. But this citizens group that we saw, though had left leanings, but was something different from the one which was organized under the banner of the political parties. Now these action groups, when we joined the service, we found to have come up under the banner of citizen action groups, social action groups, Christian action groups, like that. Now when you have citizen action groups or social action groups, you can presume or presuppose that the cause for which they champion relate to the depravity of people, marginalization of the society, and causes which really make meant for bread and butter. Now when we joined the service, there was no question of opening a window of conversation with those particular classes who agitate against the state, against the administration. But one could see certain definite pattern in their function, in their activities, and in their way they conducted the business. First of all, we saw that they form in small groups, they breed ideas, advocate protest, and try to take the ire of the people against the administration of the government. And this particular feature of their conduct made us slightly nervous as to whether to interact with such people, which is taken as an adversary of the administration or not. And therefore, a kind of a communication gap took place between such groups and the administration. But lo and behold, we saw what interest we can derive after interacting or being in touch with such organization or association to derive benefit from. I remember when we were in the district, the Naxalite movement, the way it was being carried out or conducted, we decided that there must be some window of opportunity into the organizations, and therefore why not try to open a dialogue with them, though clandestine and much behind the glare of the public. But gradually we found that the administration has found an outlet into the group which is mostly operating in the conflict zone and trying to champion the cause of the downtrodden. When it happened, there was no sanction from the government as such. It was all behind the back of the government. And when it slowly and gradually started producing results, we saw that citizens' actions are definitely in the interest of the society, but they had a cause or they had a bag to carry. And that particular bag was something anti-state, anti-administration or anti-listing. But lo and behold, with the progress in dialogue with them, we found that we are meeting a common ground whereby their interest can be easily met by the administration in collaboration with the groups championing the cause of the poor and the downtrodden. So if you ask me, Citizen Act, does it help? Did we allow it to happen? Did we collaborate with the cause? After all, whatever we do, we ultimately do in the best interest of the society. And I must say that citizens' actions were taken into account and were of help and did show some guidelines to the people in the administration that these are the areas you must have a look at it and you can do something about it with the collaboration and support of ours. It will be much faster, quicker and much more wholesome.
Mr. Dutta, while you're on the subject, as an administrator, did you regard these citizens' movements as a hindrance to administrative function?
Not at all. It all depends on what kind of equation you build up with such agitator or agitationist. And when you find that there are areas where you can have a common cause, those areas can be segregated and a kind of a parallel course of dialogue be pursued with them. And with regard to the areas where you have differences of opinion that can pin for a while and you can think of dealing with it in a manner slightly different from what you have done before.
Let's get Mr. Devi Goenka into this now. Do you think that these sort of movements are an exception rather than a rule, and do you think they achieve anything at all, because you've really been involved in lots of them?
Well, I've been confined to environmental movements all my life, and everything I've done is in the public interest. There's nothing personal about this. The fact is that if citizens were happy with what the government was doing, there would be no role for NGOs at all. The fact that so many NGOs exist and so many people who come on the streets or make demands means that they're not happy with the functioning of either the politicians or the bureaucracy or both. And my personal experience has been that when people express their thoughts loudly and come on the streets, politicians and bureaucrats both sit up and take notice. To a large extent, I've been involved with citizen movements like Narmada and Save the Western Ghats and so on. And I think in many ways these have actually succeeded in doing what they set out to do. But some of the fallouts have also been quite inexplicable. But nevertheless,